Today we'll be, I guess, looking at a few topics that will be hopefully useful in terms of leading, managing our organization, particularly as people with disabilities, through our organizations, disabled persons organizations or DPOs, the importance of being good leaders, or for those of us as working for the organizations as in terms of our staff as managers, understanding our different roles, the relationship between staff and the board in terms of our governance management relationship, and also I think it's very useful for us to understand the roles. What are the roles of the staff? What are the roles of the board in terms of governance? But I think it's useful before we look into those areas, the issue of good governance, what is becoming or has become an accepted or key issue in terms of organization development and growth, even by way of securing and attracting and securing donor assistance, the ability for us to govern our organization properly. But I think it is useful for us to firstly understand our organization as disabled persons organization. I think that is important. So in establishing a disabled persons organization, some of the things that we need to be keep in mind or look out for, firstly is how then do we define a disabled persons organization? Or I guess in some of our countries in the Pacific, we are referring to these as self-help organizations or SHOs. In Papua New Guinea, the reference to self-help organizations are those organizations of people with disabilities at the kind of at the community, at the village level. Then a cluster or a group of self-help organizations forming the national organization, which we call DPOs. But whether it be a disabled persons organization at the national level, or a self-help organization of persons with disabilities at the district or the village level, we need to understand. We need to know what are these organizations, how we define these organizations. And I'm suggesting here that a self-help organization of persons with disabilities or a disabled persons organization, it is an organization that is run by self-motivated persons with disabilities to enable their disabled peers in the community to become similarly self-motivated and self-reliant. I think that's important. It has to start somewhere. And the starting point of a group, whether it be a SHO, self-help organization, or a DPO, disabled persons organization, has to begin with us as persons with disabilities coming together. 3, 5, 10, whatever the number is, and putting our energy together, learning from each other, and we grow with the organization. The other thing that we must be looking out for in a self-help organization or disabled persons organization is that we are seeking to achieve the self-representation and self-advocacy of people with disabilities at national and local decision-making processes. So I guess what we are looking for is our participation, our inclusion in decision-making processes, where we, as people with disabilities, are the voice of persons with disabilities at those decision-making level. The suggestion also is that DPOs or SHOs, the activities of these groups or these organizations, they are facilitated by mutual support mechanisms and advocacy for persons with disabilities for the purpose of achieving maximum potential and where we can assume responsibilities for our lives and importantly our destiny. Okay, so I guess we are talking about the purpose of why we form these organizations, whom we are forming it for and with, and I guess the vision, the goal of where we want to get at. Some characteristics of self-help organizations or DPOs. Our organization is about mutual and empathetic human relationships, mutual support. We are here for each other. As people with disabilities, those of us who have learned something about running the organization, those of us who have been to school and probably are probably regarded as better educated than others, we are there not for ourselves, but we are here. We are there in the organization for each other. So there's mutual support and empathetic human relationships. We share our concerns. We shoulder or we do the heavy lifting together. It's also about group solidarity, right, where people with disabilities were able to share the experience of hardships that they may have faced, that somebody else could learn from, so that the other person can learn from, I guess, your mistakes or even your success stories in being able to overcome those common difficulties, and the sharing of insights and also those practical information that we can give each other through our personal journey and experiences. A DPO SHO is also about a collective action to improve the existing situation of people with disabilities in a given society or community. Okay, so it's collective action, it's group solidarity, and finally it's about self-determination by persons with disabilities for persons with disabilities. Right, so it's the organization in simple terms that is established, run, managed by people with disabilities for people with disabilities. It's good to talk about our organizations, or what are DPOs, what are SHOs, to have a good understanding of that. I think what we must also appreciate and recognize the importance of the components, some essential components in running a good and effective organization, a disabled person organization or a self-help organization. And one of these important components is leadership. And I wish to suggest here that leaders are needed at all levels and in all situations, and must not be left only those at the top of the organization. So leaders are not just left to the chair of the board or the chair of a particular committee that's chosen by the board. Leadership is needed at all levels, whether you are the chair of the organization, the DPO, or whether you're just a member of the SHO, self-organization at the grassroots level, at the village level, or out in the local community. Leadership is needed at all levels, from the top right up to the bottom. I also want to suggest here that leadership does not belong to only a few individuals, but each empowered member of the DPO or SHO share leadership. So leadership is not just left to the presidents or to the chairpersons. We are, as empowered members of organization, we share that leadership. I'm also suggesting here that if you want to get something done through or with other people, then we must learn leadership. And the lessons of leadership. How do we achieve our goal? By working with other people or through other people. Very important also that leaders, as leaders, you require vision, communication, trust, and self-knowledge. we cannot do it all. Self-knowledge is the awareness of knowing what we can and what we cannot do. Okay. The vision is very important. As leaders, as we develop that vision guides the organization, and also how that vision makes the staff, the members, more confident. And still talking about that vision, leaders must be able to share the vision with members to give meaning to their work. So we must need as leaders good communication skills. The importance of trust. Leaders also, you must be able to establish trust. That's very important as leaders of DPOs or SHOs. And we establish trust through consistency and integrity. I talked earlier about leaders being aware of our strengths and weaknesses, how we are able to build on our strengths, and then also compensate for our weaknesses, and being mindful that who we are and what the organization needs from us, out of us. The fit, we talk about organization fit as leaders and what the organization needs. The need as leaders to develop democratic organization, it's very important, and also gender sensitive, gender equitable organizations as leaders to be able to promote that. And also I think it's very important as leaders not just to be familiar with the issue of disability, but also what's out there in the community. Yeah, to be aware of the economic well-being of our country, the political, the social, cultural issues that's facing our community. We need to be up to speed. We need to be aware of all these issues to inform our leadership. We will talk more about leading our organizations in another section. Thank you. We've talked about establishing or strengthening our DPOs, disabled person organizations, and also or SHOs, self-help organizations at the grassroots or village or in outlying islands or in the rural areas in terms of that group of persons with disabilities. I think the other thing that is useful for me to point out here, that often as people with disabilities, we are often maybe accused, the comment is often leveled against us that we cannot run our organization. And I usually say that as people with disabilities, we should not use our disability as a reason of doing a poor job of leading an organization. Or I use a disability as an excuse for not becoming or a good leader or failing to be a good staff. So the issue of disability should not really be a hindrance, a reason for not being able to do your job whatever that is, whether you are a leader in terms of your governance role, or whether you are a staff in terms of management role. It's nothing to do with the disability. So therefore, what is important that as persons with disabilities in running our organization, we need to be aware that we are competing against many other organizations for the same dollar, for the same piece of cake. Therefore, the need to govern, to run our organization properly is very important. So I think, having said that, then we must then take time to understand the importance of good governance in our organization. How do we then govern, how do we then run our organization properly so that we are upholding what is being widely discussed these days, good governance principles. I'm suggesting here that governance is a combination of overall processes and the structures that are used in directing and managing the organization, operations and activities. So it's a combination of these, right? The systems, the structures, right, that are used in directing and managing the organization, the idea of governance. And I'm also suggesting here, the literature identifies there are 4 functions of governance. Right. The first is a strategic leadership. I talked about leadership earlier when we were discussing the importance of or the establishment or strengthening of our organizations, DPOs, SHOs. Similarly, in good governance, one of the functions of good governance is strategic leadership. It's how we set the overall direction of the organization and the main policies by which it operates. Okay, that's very important. Strategic leadership, leading the organization strategically, right, and taking those into account. Good leadership and being strategic. Secondly, the other function of governance, stewardship. That is the need for us to look after the assets of the organization, being accountable for them, and making sure that the management are behaving in an accountable and proper manner. We look after the assets. Those assets of the organization does not belong to us as board members. It belongs to the organization. Thirdly, another function of governance is maintenance. How we maintain and organize the board itself, or the executive committee, as it's often called in some of our DPOs. And also, lastly, the external relations. That's also very important. It's how the relationship of our organizations with its stakeholders, with its partners, with those who have vested interest in the organizations, whether directly or indirectly. So I guess the 4 functions of governance that I've just referred to: strategic leadership, stewardship, external relations, and the maintenance of the board. In terms of characteristics of good governance, what we should be looking for as leaders of the organization, of our DPOs, right, across the Pacific. Firstly, our organizations must be participatory, right? Meaning that all members of the organizations should have a voice in decision making, either directly or indirectly. So all members participate. It's not just those who can speak English, if English is the language used in the meeting. It's only those who, not only those who have gone to school. It's not only the men, but all members of the organization have a voice, as I said, directly or indirectly. So participatory organization. That's the first characteristic of an organization that's upholding good governance principles. Second characteristic, our organizations must be following the rule of law. Okay, and whatever we have, or the policies, the constitution, the regulations that we have in place, it must be fair and enforced equally to all members. So it doesn't favor only certain quarters. Like there's one rule, set of rules for the committee, for the board, and a set of rules for the members. That's not following the rule of law. That's not good governance. Good governance is one rule, one law for everybody. Thirdly, the other characteristic of good governance that we need to be looking out for in our organization is transparency. Our organizations must be transparent. So this is building on the free flow and the availability of information. And this can be accessed by all members of the organization, so that we have nothing to hide. So that information is provided to the members, they can understand and also monitor the organization. Transparency. The other characteristic of good governance we need to be looking out for are consensus-oriented. It's just where we be able to serve the interests of all members or stakeholders of the organization. There are different interests. It's where we agree to disagree on certain issues. There's a consensus, there's a general agreement to go down a certain direction or agree with a certain idea, but even though there are different views, it's the best interest, the overall interest of the organization is what we all stand for, not various differences that we have, but the overall good, the common good of the organization is what will stand at the end of the day when we have a meeting or do decisions. Where people are different, we have different views, we have different ideologies, we have different backgrounds, but when we talk about the organization, the idea of consensus, agreeing, even though there are differences, we agree because that's what's best for the organization. The other characteristic of good governance, the idea of equity, that's all men and women within the organization have same opportunities. It's equal. It's not the men that are favored highly than women, or women favored highly than men. Equitable organization is a characteristic of an organization. A DPO is upholding the principle of good governance. Men and women are equal within the organization. Equal chance to serve on the board, equal chance to be president or chairperson, equal chance to be in the committee or working committee or whatever. That's equal chance, equity. The other characteristic is if our organization must be effective and efficient for us to uphold the good governance principles. What I mean here, that we are making the best use of available resources, right? So that we are meeting the needs of our organization. We don't have an unending supply of resources. It's how we maximize, how we make the best use of resources available to us to meet the needs of the organization. Effective and efficient. We're trying to reduce wastage, cut down unnecessary cost to run our organization properly. The other issue, the other characteristic of good governance is that we are accountable. It must be an organization, a DPO, that upholds accountability. That's another characteristic of good governance. That's meaning that those who are making decisions in the organization, whether you're governing the organization, a board member, or managing the organization as a staff, that we are accountable to the members of the organization, to the stakeholders, and also to the general public. We are, every decision we make, every vote that's taken, every agreement that we come to, we must realize this, that we are accountable to the membership, to our donors, to our government, to the stakeholders, to our parents, or the people with disabilities. There's a greater sense of accountability that will keep us honest in our dealings. And finally, strategic vision. I talked about strategic leadership earlier as one of the functions of good governance. In terms of as a characteristics of by way of a strategic vision, we as the leaders of the organization, we have a broad and long-term perspective on how our organization should be run properly, and also the development of this organization, and I guess what's needed to sustain or support that development. So in terms of the running of our organizations, as I said earlier, our disability movement is fairly young, fairly new in the Pacific. Some of our countries, some of the countries in the Pacific have yet established their DPOs. Some have young DPOs. But how we fare, how we compete with other civil society, other organizations that have been around, NGOs, As I said earlier, it's not that we, as persons with disabilities, that we use our disability to be a reason of why we cannot govern our organization properly. Our disabilities must not be taken as an excuse for doing a good job, a bad job, sorry, about leadership and about good governance. We can run effective, democratic, efficient organizations. Our DPOs can be accountable. Our organizations, DPOs can be strategic. We can also be equitable in terms of participation of men and women, members of the organization. We must also be responsive and transparent in terms of our dealings as an organization. I think there's a lot to learn from, and I guess also in terms of our where we are located in our countries in the Pacific. Let's find out from other civil society how are they running the organization. Let's learn from them also. I know several members of Piango that are in our countries in the Pacific. I have been learning about good governance in years gone by. Let's find out from them what they know about good governance, how they can inform and support our organizations to help us to govern organizations properly. Thank you.